What happens when one of Hollywood's most outspoken actors sits down for what should be a routine morning interview, but refuses to play by the rules? The cameras were rolling, millions were watching live, and nobody could have predicted that a simple question would ignite a clash that would end with security being called and Samuel L. Jackson walking off the set of Good Morning America. Before we get into exactly what went down, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me whose side you're on after you hear this whole story. The morning started like any other at the Good Morning America studio in Times Square. Samuel L. Jackson was scheduled for a 10-minute segment to promote his latest film, a gritty crime thriller that had been generating Oscar buzz. George Stephanopoulos was set to conduct the interview, and the producers had prepared a standard list of questions. The kind of softball material that morning show audiences expect. Talk about the movie, share a funny story from set. Maybe discuss working with the director. Simple, clean, promotional. But from the moment Jackson walked onto that set and sat down across from Stephanopoulos, there was an edge in the air. The actor settled into his chair, adjusted his signature cap, and fixed the host with a look that veteran Jackson watchers would recognize immediately. This was not a man in the mood for small talk. "Samuel, great to have you here," Stephanopoulos opened with his practiced smile. "Let's talk about the new film. Your character is described as morally complex, someone who operates in shades of gray. What drew you to this role?" Jackson leaned back, studying the host for a moment before responding. "What drew me to it? The fact that it's honest. It doesn't pretend the world is black and white. It doesn't sanitize reality for comfortable audiences who want to feel good while eating their breakfast cereal." The response caught Stephanopoulos slightly off guard, but he pressed on. "While the film certainly doesn't shy away from difficult subjects, there's been some discussion about the violence in it. Some critics saying it might be gratuitous. How do you respond to that?" "Gratuitous?" Jackson repeated, his voice taking on a sharper edge. "That's an interesting word coming from a news show that broadcasts footage of real violence every single day. You show us wars, shootings, police brutality, all before 9 in the morning, and nobody calls that gratuitous. But a fictional story that tries to examine why that violence exists, that's somehow too much." Stephanopoulos shifted in his seat. "I think the concern is about glorification versus documentation. News shows a responsibility to inform the public about real events." "Responsibility," Jackson said, nodding slowly. "Let me ask you something, George. When was the last time this show took responsibility for the narratives it pushes? When was the last time you acknowledged that your quote-unquote objective journalism has a perspective, a bias, an agenda?" "We strive for objectivity in our reporting," Stephanopoulos replied, his professional demeanor showing the first cracks. "We present facts and let viewers form their own opinions." Jackson laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Facts. You present facts selected by producers, edited by networks, and filtered through the lens of corporate interests. You decide which facts matter, and which ones get buried in a 30-second segment at the end of the hour. Don't lecture me about responsibility when you're sitting in a chair funded by pharmaceutical commercials and defense contractors." The studio had gone noticeably quiet. Camera operators glanced at each other. In the control room, producers were frantically deciding whether to cut to commercial or let this play out. Stephanopoulos, to his credit, didn't back down. "That's a fairly cynical view of journalism," he said. "We have editorial independence. We report stories that matter to our viewers regardless of our advertisers." "Editorial independence," Jackson echoed. "Is that what you call it when you spend 3 weeks covering a celebrity scandal but give 5 minutes to a humanitarian crisis? When you dedicate an entire segment to analyzing a politician's outfit but rush through reports about climate change? You have independence to choose which approved narratives you'll push that day." "Samuel, I think you're conflating entertainment segments with hard news. We cover both because our audience wants both. That doesn't diminish our journalism. Your audience wants both because you've trained them to accept that format," Jackson shot back. "You've normalized the idea that serious issues should be sandwiched between cooking segments and celebrity gossip. You've turned information into infotainment, and now you're surprised when people can't tell the difference between truth and fiction." Stephanopoulos' jaw tightened. "I've been a journalist for over 2 decades. I've covered wars, elections, international crises. I've interviewed presidents and world leaders. I take my responsibility to inform the public very seriously. And I don't appreciate the suggestion that I'm part of some system designed to manipulate people." I'm not suggesting it, Jackson said, his voice deadly calm. I'm stating it as fact. You're a former political operative who moved into journalism. You know how the game works. You know how information is weaponized, how narratives are crafted, how public opinion is shaped. You're good at your job, George, but let's not pretend your job is about truth. Your job is about ratings, about keeping people watching through the commercial breaks, about maintaining the illusion that tuning in every morning makes them informed citizens. That's insulting not just to me, but to every journalist working here, Stephanopoulos replied, his voice rising slightly. We work hard to bring important stories to light, to hold powerful people accountable. Hold powerful people accountable, Jackson repeated. When have you ever truly held power accountable? You interview politicians and let them dodge questions. You bring on corporate executives and accept their carefully crafted responses. You present quote-unquote both sides as if truth exists somewhere in the middle of two carefully constructed lies. That's not accountability. That's theater. The tension in the studio was palpable now. What should have been a simple promotional interview had become something else entirely. And everyone present knew they were witnessing something unprecedented. I think we should get back to discussing your film, Stephanopoulos attempted, trying to regain control of the segment. Why? Jackson challenged. Because this conversation makes you uncomfortable? Because it doesn't fit the format? This is exactly what I'm talking about. The moment something real happens, something unscripted, you want to retreat back to the safety of talking points and promotional material. We have a format because we have limited time and multiple segments, Stephanopoulos explained, his patience clearly wearing thin. If you didn't want to discuss your film, perhaps you shouldn't have agreed to come on the show. I agreed to come on because my contract requires me to do promotional appearances, Jackson said bluntly. But nobody said I had to pretend that what happens on shows like this constitutes meaningful conversation. Nobody said I had to smile and nod while you asked me what my favorite scene to shoot was. As if that matters to anyone. It matters to our viewers who enjoy your work and want to learn more about the creative process, Stephanopoulos countered. The creative process, Jackson said with a bitter smile. You want to know about the creative process? The creative process involves fighting against studio executives who want to dilute every meaningful message, arguing with producers who think audiences are too stupid to handle complexity, and watching as marketing teams reduce art to easily digestible content bites. That's the process, George. But you don't want to talk about that because it might make your viewers question what they're consuming. Stephanopoulos took a breath, clearly trying to maintain his composure. Samuel, you seem very angry about something. Is this about the film industry, about media, or is something else going on? And that's when Jackson's expression changed. When something in his demeanor shifted from challenging to genuinely furious. Something else going on? Jackson repeated, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. You want to psychoanalyze me now, George? You want to suggest that my criticism of a broken system is just me having a bad day? That's the ultimate deflection, isn't it? When someone points out uncomfortable truths, question their mental state. Imply they're being irrational. That's not what I'm doing, Stephanopoulos protested. I'm trying to understand why you came on this show if you have such contempt for what we do. I don't have contempt for what you do, Jackson clarified. I have contempt for what you pretend you do. There's a difference. If you owned what this really is, if you said we're here to entertain people and sell advertising, I'd respect that honesty. But this performance of journalism, this costume you wear while asking meaningless questions and avoiding anything substantive, that's what I have contempt for. We ask substantive questions every day, Stephanopoulos insisted. We've had serious policy discussions, debates about important issues. Discussions that last 3 minutes before you cut to a commercial, Jackson interrupted. Debates where you let people spew misinformation without challenge because you're afraid of appearing biased. You facilitate the spread of lies in the name of balance. You give equal airtime to scientists and conspiracy theorists and act like truth is a matter of opinion. We present multiple perspectives so viewers can make informed decisions. Viewers can't make informed decisions when you present false equivalencies, Jackson fired back. When you treat established facts and complete fabrications as equally valid viewpoints, you're not informing anyone. You're confusing them. You're making them think that expertise doesn't matter, that everyone's opinion carries the same weight regardless of knowledge or evidence. Stephanopoulos leaned forward, his professional mask slipping further. You're simplifying a complex issue. Journalism requires presenting different viewpoints, allowing debate, giving people access to various perspectives. Various perspectives on what? Jackson demanded. On whether climate change is real. On whether vaccines work. On whether elections were stolen. There aren't various perspectives on facts, George. There's reality and there's denial. But you treat denial as just another opinion worth airing because controversy drives ratings. We fact-check, Stephanopoulos said defensively. We call out false claims. You fact-check after you've already broadcast the lies to millions of people, Jackson countered. You give someone a platform to spread misinformation for 10 minutes, then spend 30 seconds at the end saying, well, that's not actually true. The damage is done. The lie spreads faster than the correction. You know this. Everyone in media knows this. But you keep doing it because conflict sells. So what would you have us do? Stephanopoulos challenged. Only interview people we agree with? Only present one side of every story? That's not journalism. That's propaganda. Jackson smiled, but it wasn't friendly. Now we're getting somewhere. You're afraid of being called propaganda. So you've created this false neutrality that allows actual propaganda to flourish. You're so worried about appearing biased that you've become biased toward presenting both sides, even when one side is objectively wrong. That's not neutral, George. That's cowardly. The word hung in the air. Several crew members visibly reacted. Stephanopoulos' face flushed. I've risked my career multiple times to report difficult truths. I've faced pressure from politicians, from corporations, from viewers who didn't like what I had to say. Don't call me a coward. Then stop acting like one, Jackson said coldly. Stop hiding behind format and balance and objectivity when what you really mean is you don't want to make powerful people uncomfortable. You don't want to lose access to politicians. You don't want advertisers pulling out. You've made a calculation that it's safer to present both sides than to actually pursue truth. And that calculation is destroying public discourse. This is absurd, Stephanopoulos said, his composure finally breaking. You come on my show, accept the platform we're providing to promote your film, and then attack everything about how we operate. If we're so terrible, why are you here? Because the system is designed so that I have to be here, Jackson responded. Because the studios require promotional appearances. Because the media and entertainment industries are interconnected in ways that make it impossible to operate outside this structure. Because even though I know this is meaningless theater, I'm still obligated to participate in it. That doesn't mean I have to pretend it's something it isn't. So, you're trapped in a system you despise but benefit from, Stephanopoulos said with an edge of satisfaction. Isn't that a bit hypocritical? Absolutely, Jackson agreed without hesitation. I'm completely complicit. I make millions of dollars working in an industry that prioritizes profit over art, that reduces complex stories to franchise products, that cares more about overseas box office than meaningful content. I'm part of the problem, George. But at least I'm honest about it. At least I'm not pretending that what I do serves some higher purpose. And you think journalism doesn't serve a higher purpose? I think it could, Jackson said. I think it should, but it doesn't. Not the way it's currently practiced. You've turned news into a product to be consumed rather than information to be understood. You've made journalism about personalities and drama rather than truth and accountability. You've failed in your fundamental responsibility to an informed citizenry. Stephanopoulos shook his head. You're painting with an incredibly broad brush. There are journalists doing extraordinary work, risking their lives, exposing corruption, holding institutions accountable. There are, Jackson acknowledged, and they're usually doing it independently outside of major networks without the resources and platforms that organizations like this have. Meanwhile, you've got all the money, all the access, all the technology, and what do you use it for? Celebrity interviews, political horse race coverage, manufactured controversies. You've taken the most powerful information distribution system in human history and turned it into a profit engine. Everything requires funding, Stephanopoulos argued. Journalism isn't free. We need revenue to operate, to pay journalists, to fund investigations. And that funding model has corrupted the entire enterprise, Jackson shot back. When your revenue depends on keeping people watching, you optimize for engagement rather than education. You prioritize stories that generate emotional reactions over stories that actually matter. You've turned citizens into consumers and information into entertainment. Our viewers are perfectly capable of distinguishing between entertainment and news, Stephanopoulos insisted. Are they? Jackson challenged. When you spend an hour mixing cooking segments with international crises and celebrity gossip with political analysis, how are they supposed to distinguish when you present everything with the same level of urgency and importance? How do they know what actually matters? You've created this information smoothie where nothing has weight, where everything is just content to be consumed and forgotten. People can change the channel if they want hard news, Stephanopoulos countered. We're providing what our audience wants. You're providing what you've trained your audience to want, Jackson corrected. You've spent decades conditioning people to have short attention spans, to expect quick answers to complex questions, to accept superficial coverage of deep issues. And now you point to their preferences as justification for continuing to fail them. Stephanopoulos stood up slightly from his chair, his voice rising. I have had enough of this. You've spent this entire interview insulting me, insulting my colleagues, insulting the work we do. If you hate media so much, if you think we're all corrupt and worthless, then leave. Walk off. Nobody's forcing you to stay. Jackson remained seated calm, his eyes locked on the host. Is that what you want, George? You want me to leave so you can go to commercial, compose yourself, and come back with some prepared statement about how I was difficult and unprofessional so you can control the narrative about what just happened here? I want you to either have a respectful conversation or end this interview, Stephanopoulos said firmly. Respectful, Jackson repeated. You mean compliant? You mean willing to stick to your script, to ask and answer questions that don't challenge anything, to participate in the performance. That's what respect means in this context. Stay in your lane. Play your role. Don't disrupt the show. Respect means not attacking someone who's given you a platform to speak, Stephanopoulos replied sharply. You didn't give me a platform, Jackson said. The studio publicists negotiated my appearance as part of a promotional tour. You get content. The film gets exposure. Everyone benefits. But let's not pretend this was some generous gift. This is a transaction, and I'm simply refusing to deliver my end of it in the way you expected. Then you're breaching an agreement, Stephanopoulos said. What agreement? Jackson asked. Show me the contract that says I have to smile and pretend. Show me where I signed away my right to speak honestly. You invited me here, assuming I'd play along, and I'm choosing not to. That's not a breach. That's just uncomfortable for you. Stephanopoulos turned to someone off camera, presumably a producer. We need to go to commercial. Of course you do, Jackson said. Of course you do, Jackson said, his voice cutting through the studio noise. Run away to commercial the moment things get real. That's the solution to everything, isn't it? Avoid, deflect, move on to the next segment. Never sit with discomfort. Never let a moment breathe. Just cut away and hope your audience forgets what they just heard. We're going to commercial, Stephanopoulos repeated, this time addressing the control room directly. Now, but before they could cut away, Jackson continued. You know what the worst part is, George? It's not that you're doing bad journalism. It's that you've convinced yourself you're doing good journalism. You actually believe that what happens on this set matters, that these conversations have value, that you're serving the public interest. That delusion is more dangerous than any lie you could tell. We are not going to continue this, Stephanopoulos said, his voice tight with controlled anger. This interview is over. The interview was over the moment I sat down, Jackson replied. We've just been performing the death of meaningful discourse for the last several minutes. But sure, make it official. End it. Prove my point about how you handle anything that doesn't fit your predetermined narrative. A producer appeared at the edge of the set, speaking urgently to Stephanopoulos, who shook his head repeatedly. The camera operators had stopped looking through their viewfinders and were watching the scene unfold directly. In the control room, the decision had been made. They were staying live. This was too big to cut away from. You want to know why people don't trust media anymore? Jackson asked, not waiting for an answer. It's because of moments like this. Because when confronted with legitimate criticism, your response is to shut it down, to end the conversation, to exercise editorial control. You're not interested in dialogue. You're interested in monologue with the illusion of exchange. I've conducted thousands of interviews, Stephanopoulos said, his voice shaking slightly with anger. I've interviewed presidents. I've covered wars. I've reported from conflict zones. I've dedicated my career to informing the public, and I'm supposed to sit here and accept being lectured by an actor about journalism. Why not? Jackson challenged. Because I'm just an actor? Because I'm not part of your club? That's exactly the elitism I'm talking about. You think credentials give you monopoly on truth. You think your journalism degree, and your political connections make you qualified to decide what's important and what isn't. But from where I'm sitting, all those credentials have done is make you better at avoiding the real questions. The real questions? Stephanopoulos repeated incredulously. What are the real questions, Samuel? Please enlighten me. Why does your network give platform to election deniers? Jackson fired immediately. Why do you allow pharmaceutical companies to sponsor health news segments? Why do you spend more time covering royal weddings than refugee crisis? Why do you treat politics like sports and policy like personality? Those are real questions, but you won't ask them because the answers indict the entire structure you operate within. We've done extensive reporting on all of those issues, Stephanopoulos protested. Reporting that goes nowhere, Jackson said. Reporting that generates a news cycle and then disappears. Reporting that never follows through, never holds anyone accountable, never leads to actual change. You report on corruption, and then invite the corrupt people back on your show to explain themselves. You report on lies, and then give the liars airtime to spread more lies. You report on injustice, and then move on to the weather forecast. What do you want from journalism? Stephanopoulos demanded. What would satisfy your impossibly high standards? I want you to choose, Jackson said simply. Stop trying to be everything. Stop trying to inform and entertain. Stop trying to be neutral and accessible. Stop trying to serve the public and the shareholders. Choose. Either be entertainment and own it, or be journalism and accept that it won't always be popular, won't always be comfortable, won't always be profitable. That's naive, Stephanopoulos said. The world doesn't work that way. Organizations need funding. Audiences have preferences. We have to balance multiple priorities. And in trying to balance everything, you've lost your center, Jackson replied. You've compromised so much in the name of pragmatism that there's nothing left worth defending. You're not informing people, George. You're managing their expectations. You're teaching them to accept that truth is optional, that accountability is theatrical, that change is impossible. Stephanopoulos threw his hands up. So, I'm responsible for the decline of democracy now? Is that what you're saying? You're complicit in it, Jackson said without hesitation. Not solely responsible, but definitely complicit. Every time you let a lie go unchallenged, every time you prioritize access over truth, every time you choose comfort over confrontation, you're contributing to the erosion of shared reality. And you do it with this air of professionalism that makes people think this is how it's supposed to be. I challenge lies constantly, Stephanopoulos insisted, his face red. I've lost interviews because I've pushed too hard. I've been accused of bias from all sides because I don't let people off easy. You challenge lies within acceptable parameters, Jackson corrected. You push back just enough to maintain credibility, but never enough to actually threaten power. You've mastered the art of appearing tough while remaining completely safe. That's not courage. That's performance. And you're so much braver than me? Stephanopoulos asked sarcastically. Making millions on blockbuster films, living in luxury, benefiting from the same systems you criticize. Where's your courage? I never claimed to be courageous, Jackson said calmly. I claim to be honest. I benefit from broken systems. I profit from industries that exploit people. I'm part of structures that perpetuate inequality. But I don't pretend otherwise. I don't wrap myself in the flag of public service while serving corporate interests. That's the difference between us. The difference between us, Stephanopoulos said slowly, is that I actually contribute something meaningful to society. I inform people about important events. I give them tools to understand their world. What do you contribute? Explosions and one-liners. The studio went completely silent. Jackson's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than it had been, but somehow more intense. You really believe that, don't you? He said. You really think that what you do here, this morning's show mixture of news and nonsense, actually helps people understand their world. You think that by presenting carefully curated information in easily digestible segments, you're empowering citizens. You're not, George. You're pacifying them. You're giving them the illusion of being informed while ensuring they never have enough context to actually do anything about what they've learned. That is insulting not just to me, but to our entire audience, Stephanopoulos said, his voice rising again. Our viewers are intelligent, engaged people who use our reporting to make informed decisions about their lives. Your viewers are doing their best with what you give them, Jackson responded. But what you give them is incomplete, decontextualized, and designed to keep them watching rather than thinking. You're not serving them. You're serving advertisers and shareholders. Your viewers are the product, not the customer. Stephanopoulos stood up fully now, removing his microphone. I'm done. This interview is over. We're going to commercial, and when we come back, you won't be here. There it is, Jackson said, also standing but making no move to remove his microphone. When the conversation gets too uncomfortable, shut it down. When the criticism cuts too close, end it. When someone refuses to play their assigned role, remove them. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You can't handle dissent. You can't handle challenge. You can only handle carefully managed exchanges that maintain the illusion of discourse. You're not dissenting, Stephanopoulos shot back. You're grandstanding. You're using my show as a platform to attack me personally while pretending it's about some higher principle. If you had legitimate concerns, you could have raised them professionally. Instead, you chose to be insulting and confrontational. I'm being confrontational because professional courtesy has gotten us nowhere, Jackson said. Because polite criticism is ignored. Because working within the system only perpetuates the system. Sometimes you have to break the format to expose what the format is hiding. And what is it hiding? Stephanopoulos demanded. What great truth have you exposed here today? That this is all a performance, Jackson said. That you're performers. I'm a performer, and we're all pretending that what happens on this stage matters. That's the truth. This interview, this show, this entire apparatus of morning television exists to sell products and maintain status quo. It's not about information. It's not about democracy. It's about commerce disguised as journalism. A security guard had appeared at the edge of the set now, standing by uncertainly. Stephanopoulos glanced at him, then back at Jackson. You need to leave. I'll leave, Jackson said, finally reaching for his microphone. But not because you're kicking me off. I'll leave because there's nothing more to say. You're not going to suddenly start doing real journalism. Your network isn't going to stop prioritizing profit over truth. And your viewers aren't going to demand better because you've trained them to accept this. So yeah, I'll leave. But everything I said stands. He removed the microphone and placed it carefully on his chair. Then he turned to face the main camera directly, looking into the lens at the millions of people watching at home. To everyone watching, he said clearly, stop accepting this. Stop pretending that watching news makes you informed. Stop giving your attention to organizations that don't respect it. Demand better. Expect more. And when they fail you, which they will, find alternatives. There are journalists doing real work, asking real questions, and they need your support more than these networks do. Security, Stephanopoulos called out, his voice sharp. Jackson turned back to him one last time. You could have had a real conversation today, George. You could have engaged with these ideas, agreed or disagreed on the merits. Instead, you're having me removed. That tells everyone watching exactly what I've been saying. You can't handle truth when it's inconvenient. Get him out of here, Stephanopoulos said to the security guard, who moved forward hesitantly. Jackson held up his hand. I'm going. No need for drama. He looked at Stephanopoulos one more time. Good luck maintaining this charade. I genuinely hope it's worth whatever you're getting paid. And with that, Samuel L. Jackson walked off the Good Morning America set under his own power, leaving behind a stunned studio, a furious host, and millions of viewers who had just witnessed morning television explode into something nobody had scripted, nobody had expected, and nobody would forget. If you made it this far, make sure you subscribe to the channel and drop a comment below. What do you think? Did Samuel L. Jackson cross the line, or did he say what needed to be said? Let me know in the comments.